what I've found with a lot of people, as soon as we start putting a number, that starts to mess with people's mind.
What I try to tell people when they're looking at the scale is that you can be a 200-pound person that looks like Peter Griffin, or you can be a 200-pound Arnold Schwarzenegger. So the scale doesn't inherently tell you about what's underneath it, and that's why I love waist circumference.
I don't really like scale weight as a metric.
Welcome back to Recommended Daily Value. On today's episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing Aron Keys. Aron and I go way back for the last couple of years, and we went back and forth on everything sustainable weight loss in terms of how to sustainably lose weight and how to keep that weight off and how to do so without completely overhauling and ruining your life. So I think it's a good episode, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. I'll see you guys in there. All right, welcome back to Recommended Daily Value. I am your host, Tyler Woodward, and I am joined by Aron Keys. How you doing today, Aron?
Yeah, good man. Yourself?
Doing pretty well. Aron, what are we talking about today?
So I was thinking we could talk a little bit about like just dieting, when it's best to sort of do certain things within a diet, how you can set up call it a diet without actually doing a set plan, counting calories, that sort of thing. How we can take someone that's like really new to the situation, maybe have a look at their habits, have a look at like their accountability, and then what we can help them with to be able to start their weight loss journey and in the most reasonable sort of way.
So, what is the first step you're taking when you're trying to set up someone's diet, one of your clients, let's say?
So what I would usually ask them to do is for the first week, to just track their food. So I don't ask them to change anything. I just want to see purely what they're doing day in, day out, because I find that like a lot of people don't really have a conscious like knowledge of what they're eating. They're sort of just they might make a few dinners or whatever it might be. They're snacking, but to actually consciously look at like, okay, I'm having this for breakfast every day, or I'm having this when I get home from work, or this is the snack that I like to have. Having that knowledge is going to be quite helpful. So what I would like them to do is to throughout the week one, this is what we're going to do. I want you to journal every single thing that you put into your mouth, so that we can then have a look at the end of that first week and say, okay, you are pretty consistent, eating throughout the day, but maybe you're having, 4 coffees throughout the day. You get home from work, you sit down, you chill out, you watch TV, and you're grabbing half a block of chocolate, or some lollies or something like that. We're trying to look at what those habits are throughout that first week, so that then we can start to make some really slight adjustments for the weeks going forward, without having to give them this big thing of like, all right, we're going to count all these calories, and so you need to get a food scale, and you need to get MyFitnessPal, and you need to change everything that you've eaten, up until this point. We're going to throw it all out. We're going to go to the shops and get all this cool stuff, that you've probably never had before, because that can be quite overwhelming for someone. And I feel that sort of tracking is handy, and it will come in handy like later on. But that initial phase for someone that's not used to it, that might overwhelm them, and it could like backfire in the future if they just stick to that for, say 6 to 12 weeks. And then once the diet finishes, it's a lot easier for them to just fall back into bad habits.
I think it is so illuminating for so many people when they have to come face to face with their diet, when they can actually see right in front of them what they're eating on a day to day or week to week basis. Those light bulbs can go off a lot of times. There's I don't know if it's famous, but Pat Davidson told me this when I was at one of his conferences with Connor Harris. And he pulled a quote from, I think it's attributed to Peter Drucker, who I'm not even sure who that is. But the quote is, what gets managed gets measured, I believe. And most people have no idea really what they're putting into their body in terms of micronutrients, in terms of, macronutrient intake. All they know is whether or not they're hungry. They're really just going based off feel. So having some purely analytical data, it can go leaps and bounds for making small but very important changes in improving their health and helping them to achieve their goals. Like, even with protein, some people think a lot of people assume they're getting enough protein, and then when they actually see it, it's not even close, has is what I've been finding, and then some people have been telling me the opposite. They find that a lot of bodybuilders just slamming protein, and they get way too much of it, which is interesting.
Yeah, the protein one is very interesting. I have seen it um, with my wife, even, when she has just sort of eaten to feel. You notice that there's not a lot of protein. If you're not stacking shakes or having like some sort of muscle meat with each meal, you definitely can be deficient in that. And while we don't need, the sort of 1 gram per pound, you can get away with like the point 0.8 range, maybe a little bit lower depending what you're doing. But it's, yeah, I find that like a lot of people will probably gravitate more towards those snacks that don't really have much protein. It's more carbs and fats, um, that they're going to be having throughout the day, and then, yeah, they're going to be quite deficient.
Yeah, women I find a little bit tend to gravitate a little bit more towards fat, and it's so easy. They might be getting 50 grams of protein some days. You see all these women on the TikToks eating a piece of avocado toast and an egg for breakfast. That's 9 grams of protein, and maybe that's not a third of their calories. Maybe it's like 20%. Hopefully, it's closer to
Hmm.
20%. But, you got 2 more meals, they're probably not eating protein snacks between meals. I mean, no one really eats protein snacks unless you're a meathead like you and I with a shake. So then you got 2 meals to make up, I think at the minimum, everyone should be getting probably around 100 grams of protein. So you get 90 grams of protein for 2 meals and, divide that by 2, it's 45 grams each. Those are big old meals of protein. That's a lot of protein in that.
Yeah, definitely, and it was quite interesting to sort of look at, like, when my wife did go and decide to do a bit of a diet and stuff like that. What, like, one way she referenced it is like, oh, I like this one because it's a little bit more girly, and it was, more salad based, and, like yogurts and different things, and so you can start to see that it's like, oh, okay, so there's like this other aspect where, you know ideally you'd be able to sit down and have like a nice big steak and some potato and some like good stuff, but like a lot of women will tend to shy away from that kind of meal plan, and sort of they want more lighter snacks. And I don't know if that's just because, they've sort of had this indoctrination over the years where it's like women eat a certain way and men eat a certain way, and that's still like factored in, or whether it's just a general thing that they just, they can't handle the bigger meals like we can.
Yeah, I would not have thought about that as well. That is a great point. Let's take step 2. I'm your client. I've tracked my calories for the last week, basically in and out. You can see all my meals. What are you finding the
Mhm.
most common mistakes? And we're framing this in terms of someone that wants to lose weight, correct?
Yes, yeah. So we'll look at that example of losing weight. So you've come back to me and you've got what you've been eating laid out for me. So what we're going to do is we're still not going to go into the calories yet, because with what I've found with a lot of people, as soon as we start putting a number, that starts to mess with people's mind, like on what they're actually doing. Because, let's say that if, I said to you, okay, we're going to put you on 2,000 calories, you might go, oh man, that's really low. Like, as a man, I've seen these guys that are eating 4, 5,000 calories. Like, what? That's really, really low. But then if I put you on 3,000, you might go, oh, but I want to lose weight, and I've seen these other guys that eat at like 1,800, and that's like too high. So it starts to get tricky with this. So what I would like to do is, once I see your plan and we go, okay, we're going to do some weight loss, we're going to break it down, and we're going to go, okay, so what are the daily habits that you are like finding yourself with, and then what are the slight variables. So a daily habit for you might be that you are having 2 or 3 coffees over the course of the day. You're having, a couple of large coffees with maybe 1 or 2 sugars. Okay, so we're going to look at that. We're going to go, all right, maybe instead of having, let's say you had the 3 large coffees with sugar, right? For week 2, what we're going to do is we're going to drop it down to like maybe a medium size, or we're going to drop it to like half a sugar. So we're going to make like a slight tweak to one thing. We're going to have a look at your meals, and we're going to just slightly tweak those meals from what you have. So you might be having, like spaghetti bolognese for lunch or something like that using like a whole wheat pasta. Or we might try and look for a sourdough pasta option or maybe like a sweet potato noodle. Just slight tweak. Same meal, something you like, but it's just a little bit of a better option. You might look at those little habits that you get into at night. You get home from work, you're chilling out, you're watching Netflix, you're going for the lollies, you're going for the chocolate. It's like, okay, can we reduce the amount that you're having of that without taking it out? We're just gonna halve it, quarter it, whatever it might be. Then what we're going to do is we're going to build some better habits in the things that you sort of maybe can't control as much. So they're the things that you've got control over. The other things that come into it with weight loss as well is social events. And if you're new to the game of losing weight, you probably don't want to go into a social event and be like, "Sorry guys, can't eat that. I'm dieting," because it's going to just lead to more questions. There's going to be some criticism there. Like some people are really cool about it, and some people are just losers about it. And and you got to take that into consideration. So what we would do in that situation is we'd go, okay, like let's say that you went to work someone's birthday that week and there was cake on offer. All right, so you don't want to make a scene, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm on a diet, I can't eat that. So it's like that sort of thing. It's like, let's just halve that portion if you can. Let's just give you some like little go-to's, like, oh hey, yeah, you know what, I'll save that for later. Take it home, eat it, throw it out, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just like have that little get out so that you can still stick to your plan, but you've got some like better options to sort of segue out of that scenario without having to go into the whole I'm dieting and I'm doing this and make it
Mhm.
uncomfortable. Then I would give you some other options that you could have. So obviously you're going out for a meal, you got friends, whatever the case, you're going to shell out some money to buy this. So usually mentally you want to have something that's nice. So then that would be like, okay, well here's a couple of better options. If you can get them to cook it in, a saturated fat like a butter or an olive oil. um, you know Maybe opt for just a steak on its own and like a glass of coke or something. Drop the chips. Little changes to just give them something to still be able to go social with these things when they do come up, but then also too through the week on those like habitual things that you're doing every day, make those slight tweaks.
That's great advice. And I think one of the reasons you're largely talking about the everyday person, which is, the majority of our audience, but to illustrate the example of the bodybuilder who has to do this consistently where they gain weight, lose weight. There's a reason every bodybuilder, and not literally every bodybuilder, but just about, including myself, and I'd imagine you're pretty similar, even though you like to cook, eat more or less the same meals every day. So that way, when it's time to cut some calories, they literally just alter their meals. Maybe they go from 4 eggs to three, or they go from whole milk to 2%. They don't really make significant changes to their life. But we understand that for the average person, there are inconsistencies in their day to day or weekly routine. And I guess, that is a huge challenge that you have to overcome when you're trying to make a dietary change in order to induce weight loss or something of the sort.
That's definitely something that you can, that yeah, as a bodybuilder, you have those sorts of, it's like a more advanced, I guess, advanced but simpler technique where it's just like you have your set of meals that you kind of will eat throughout the whole year, and all that's varying
Mhm.
is maybe the amounts, like vaguely, like you said, you'll go from 4 eggs to 3 eggs because it gets really boring having to weigh and track and put things in an app and, oh, that's this many calories. It's like you want to do that once and then just forget about it and just kind of run with it until it stops working.
And that is a very different mentality than the average person where food is almost just a fuel. And my dad used to say that all the time, and I always gave him flack about it because he would say food is just fuel, but then, he's eating cookies and all that stuff too. It's like, well, if it's just fuel, why are you eating that crap? And yeah, I love cookies more than everyone, but um so I do defer. And if someone is going to immediately, if their goal is to lose weight, you got to try and probably put them in a calorie deficit. But one of the things that I really try and do with my clients is try and get their calories up as high as they can without them gaining weight. So that could be trying to find foods that they don't digest as well, trying to eliminate difficult to digest foods like beans or lentils, switching the brown rice to white rice, and then maybe even adding a good amount of fiber in throughout the day, like through peppers and things like that. One thing that I have noticed recently is that I actually switched from skim milk. So I was drinking skim milk. I was like, all right, let me lower the calories. I want to lose some weight. As you can see, I'm a little bit thick. And I went back up to 2% and whole milk. And I always buy two things of milk at the store. And I started losing weight again, which was super weird. I'd gone up in weight when I was drinking the skim milk for a couple weeks. I add, same amount of dairy, same amount of milk, should be gaining weight more at a more rapid rate because I'm eating a higher fat milk with more calories. And I think just because I maybe digested it better or for whatever reason, I the weight started to come back off, which was weird. And I got back to like the 207 point that I've been averaging at. So it is just interesting to think about all the different things that go into a weight loss equation. But so let's say, so you're instilling these habits
Mhm.
and you're making these changes over time and, navigating all of the curveballs that life throws at you in a weekly basis. What is that next step?
So the next step in that process, and I guess it's probably good to outline from the start that as a coach, I like to take things a little bit slower than some. So I understand that there's a bit of a thing where people come in and they want to do these 90-day transformations, and they want these quick results, but a lot of people need to understand that you didn't get there quickly. It didn't take you 90 days to put that weight on, so it's probably not going to take you that same 90 days to get it off. You can make some good changes in that time, no doubt, but we've got to take the steps back. And so it's kind of like you take the long road because it ends up being quicker than that short quick fix that's like, yeah, okay, well, we could put you in a 1,000 calorie deficit if you want, but you're going to be really hungry. You're probably going to hate it the whole time. You're going to feel like crap. You're not going to sleep very well. You'll lose weight and you'll stress out and you'll put it back on pretty quick. So it's trying to really instill those habits where it's like you might like take 24 weeks or 36 weeks, or it might take you a whole year to get from this point to this point. But you're going to have consistent progress along the way. There's not going to be too many, peaks and valleys with that. It's going to be pretty linear throughout that time. And you're going to be able to, keep the hormones correct, like keep the the protective hormones up. You're going to be able to sleep well. You're not going to be stressing out too much, and all these things are going to factor in. So I guess to get back to your question, like for step three, it's like, okay, we've started to build these habits. So this is over the course of a few weeks. We're starting to we've instilled that consciousness of like, okay, you need to be conscious of what it is that you're eating. So you've journaled that for the week. It might be worth journaling to continue, so that we can start to look at like other things, like you said, digestion. Like, don't just write down I had spaghetti for lunch. Write down what you had, and then let's have a look at how you felt. Did you crash after that? Did you feel energized? Did your body heat up? Like, have these sorts of questions that you can ask.
So you're saying you want to know how it's going, what's going in and what's coming out.
Yeah, exactly. So start to then get to that
I'm
point
just
where it's
messing
like,
around.
oh, okay.
So yeah, no, I'm half kidding. But no, I completely agree. I'm just throwing a crappy joke out there. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because you and I could eat the same meal and you could feel like crap after and have digested it terribly, and I could have eat feel great, and that's going to have very
Mhm.
different effects on both our weight loss and our day to day energy levels and all that.
Yeah, so then that's when we start to go, okay, like, how are these individual meals making us feel? While we're also in the process of continuing to make those better changes. So, we use that example at the start of like, all right, you wanted that, that chocolate every night while you sit down with your partner and watching Netflix, whatever it might be. So it's like, okay, we've gotten to a point where we are now still including that, but we've made a better option. Maybe it's like an organic dark chocolate, or maybe it's like a grass-fed chocolate, or it's a better option. Maybe we've been able to
Mhm.
test something out. We've been able to say, okay, well, maybe like let's take that out and let's substitute it with some good quality yogurt, a bit of fruit and honey. So it's like maybe you're just wanting that like little sugar hit, before bed. It's going to help you sleep, all that sort of good stuff. So it's like let's try a better option now, so we can start to sub things in and out during this point. So as the coach, we if we wanted to, we could obviously work out their calories from day one, but we're not going to give that information to the client. That's going to be for us to sort of track and go, okay, like they're roughly on this. All right, let's see if maybe we can, weight loss is going really good, or maybe it's happening quite quickly, so maybe we need to boost it up a bit. Give them some, yeah, just have, 3 oranges instead of two. Have a whole cup of berries, with this, or 4 spoons of honey, or whatever it might be. Like, give them that guidance so that they feel like they know that they're on track. It's not just a free for all. But we're starting to now implement some better strategies for them with it, and taking all the guesswork out. And so we just run that for. I would probably say like you could do all of this in a 12-week block. Like that's a good enough amount of time for someone to start to build up some pretty reasonable habits, to start to see this as a bit more of a lifestyle, as opposed to just like, I'm getting on a diet, I'm going to get lean, and then I'm going to get off.
That's a great point. And I think building those habits is so important. I mean, it really is the foundation of, let's say, sustainable weight loss. Because you can just make yourself miserable for the longest time, or, the shortest time, and you're gonna end up right back where you started. And that's one of my biggest regrets in a way. Honestly, it's multifold because I did these huge bodybuilding style cuts and bulks where at one point, you know, I'm at 207 right now and I'm like, let's say heavy 207, but I was at 220 and I was a fat 220. um, and I probably look a lot better at 207 than I did when I got up to 220. But I think doing those major cuts and bulk sessions really had a profound impact on my metabolism. And every time that I started going up in weight, the first time to get to 190 was really hard. Then 2 years later, I tried to get to 200. I ate a ridiculous amount of food to get to 200. Then the next year, I shot up to 204, was pretty amped. And then the year after that, I shot up to like 220, and that was easy. Like I did not do that on purpose. So I think doing those major swings made it harder for me to maintain my weight at a good healthy weight. I would like to get down to probably 190 and see if I can just maintain that. Right now, it's not my immediate goal to get down there, but doing this sustainably will provide a real long-term solution. And then, hopefully you can get to your, let's say, set point that you'd like to be at. And, maybe you gain 5 pounds in the holidays and then you can cut back down a little bit and dial in your habits, and you know exactly what you need to get back to get where you need to be.
Yeah, that's a really important thing, and I think that like doing it in this particular way, it's maybe not as sexy as some other coaches put out there. It's not the most glamorous thing, and it's not what Instagram and TikTok are really about. They're sort of like a very glamorous, like, oh, get these quick fixes and do this for 5 minutes a day and whatever. But it comes down to that point. It's like, okay, you do want to be able to take those times off in the year, whether it's a family holiday or whether it's Christmas time or whatever it might be, where you could just kind of relax a little bit. And yeah, you might put on a little bit, you said like 5 pounds. So things like 2-ish kilos. It's like mostly water weight anyway. So it's not like a big deal, but you do want to be able to relax. And if you've got those principles that you can fall back on, and you kind of know what foods are working for you, it's very quick to be able to just go, oh, look, I had a bit of a relax this week or for a few weeks or whatever it might be over the holidays. When I get back, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be able to implement these strategies straight away. And within a week, you're going to start to feel better. You're going to be probably close to back where you started from anyway. Whereas like if you've got a restrictive diet, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but in the past when I've dieted, it's like what got me lean last year is, and like the calories that I had and the types of foods that I was eating, it doesn't seem to work for me this year. I can't explain why that doesn't work, but I've just noticed that when I've tried to go back to previous diets that I've written out, they haven't had the same effect.
I well, I was super young when I was cutting and bulking. I mean, I'm still only 24. So I wouldn't say I had that effect, but every summer when I was doing this basically, when I was doing real cuts and it came off pretty easily, I was not doing it in a very healthy way. So my day pretty much and let's say I mean for a kid and for compared to most people even it was probably pretty healthy and some people would think it was super healthy, but I was waking up at 5:30 or something, Jocko Willink style, going to the gym, coming back, no food, landscaping, no food, coming back at 5 p.m., housing some protein or something, one big ass meal, then going to jujitsu, and then housing some ice cream, like a chip. I would eat a huge chipwich. So I was fasting all day. And, I remember looking back, I was super stressed out. I was snap like this, and I was 19 or something. So, you should not be snapping like that as a kid. But, and I was very into, I would justify the hell out of it. So, intermittent fasting, autophagy, your body needs time to clean itself out, yada, 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 all that. Not so things I don't necessarily agree with anymore. But, I definitely have found that it's harder for me to lose weight now, but I also feel like that's probably because the way I was doing it before. Intermittent fasting definitely makes weight loss easier. It's because you don't feel hungry at all most of the day. And then you come back and eat heaps of food because you're only eating one, maybe two meals. But it's not necessarily sustainable or the right way to do it. And you're definitely not gonna I don't think fasting is good for you. I think it's a detriment to your health generally. So, as we've discussed the majority of this podcast, if you're not going to do something forever, then you should not be doing it to get where you need to go.
And that's one thing that I think well, not one thing, but it's one of many things that I think the fitness industry is still doing, where it's like they'll take one thing and they'll go like fasting. It's probably not a bad idea to throw in a fasting day every now and then. You um, just to give the body a rest, or to have like a set period of time, maybe a 12-hour window where you just kind of chill. Um, every now and then, like throw those things in. They're like a tool in the toolbox that you can use to help you out. But I think when we take those sorts of things and we go, this has to be an every single day thing for the rest of your life. You have to fast for 16 hours, or you have to do this crazy workout, or you have to like, eat a vegan diet or whatever it might be. It's kind of like, look, they're all like everything will work to some degree, but it's not like there's no silver bullet with this stuff. It's just, you want to lose weight, you need to create a deficit, you need to be in there long enough to reach that, whatever the goal is. There's healthy ways to do it, there's unhealthy ways to do it. Same with gaining weight. Get yourself into a surplus, lift some weights, sit there until it stops working or until you reach that goal. Adjust from there. It's not there's not a complicated process.
Yeah, at its principles. And that's another thing that drives me nuts. I've been thinking about it a ton recently. And again, one of my bigger regrets your surplus should be at maybe a 5% surplus. And then your metabolism will adapt, which is, the most healthy thing. I think you would agree, being able to eat more calories, and that is your new maintenance. Then you
Mhm.
bump it up another 5%. You don't need to be in a huge surplus to gain muscle. You don't need to be in a surplus at all, really, to gain muscle. What you do need to be in a surplus is to gain weight. And that is a huge differentiation. And if you want to get to 200 pounds from 160 pounds, which is, basically what I did, I'm just throwing that out there. You can't maintenance your way up there. I heard Lane Norton say something along those lines recently, and I was like, yeah, that's a good point. But you can gain muscle at maintenance. And, you'll really need to be in a very small surplus to probably maximize muscle gain as long as you're hitting your protein needs. And then the carbs help with energy and performance, and the fats help with hormones. So we need to do these things in a very sustainable way. And then if you're like me
Hmm.
or you, I don't think you have any intention of stepping on the stage, correct?
Yeah, no, no intention.
You just want to look good with your shirt off. So then we don't need to do these huge cuts. Maybe we have to do like we do a year or two long bulk, and now we're eating an extra 500 calories a day, and we're not gaining weight. And then maybe
Hmm.
we cut our calories if we want to get a little ripped for the summer. And now you're cutting at your old maintenance, and you're a very happy clam.
Yeah, definitely. Like these things, even with it, yeah, either way that you're going to go, whether you're going to gain weight or you're going to lose weight, it's like the the deficit or the surplus doesn't need to be that big, and it's probably worth toying around with. Like, yeah, once again, it might not sound sexy if you're on a 100-calorie deficit, but hell, if you're losing weight on a 100-calorie deficit, you're going to be so much better off than the guy that has to dip into 500 calories, and you're going to feel a lot better. You know, same with the surplus. Like not having to shovel in like tremendous amounts of food to get where you want to go. But I think especially like with either of those two things, um, that people just want to see like quick results. So yeah, if you go from, you know, if you drop into 1,000-calorie deficit, it's like you're probably going to lose some weight pretty quickly. You're going to be super depleted of like everything as well. So, naturally you're going to feel that pretty quickly, and you're going to think, oh wow, I'm losing weight. This is awesome. Like I can keep doing this. Same with the surplus. You go on down, an extra couple of thousand calories for a week or two, and strength might go up, and you might think, yeah man, I'm gaining this muscle, my shirt's feeling tight, like all this good stuff. It's like you're just getting fat, and then you're not really like providing the environment for what it is that you want to do. So yeah, stepping up slowly. I think people need to understand that it's like we need to get away from that like 90-day mentality of things. It's like let's just set more goals for like 6 months, 12 months. Let's get in there and really work on the training and do you know really like focus on what you can do with that, taking those sets to failure, doing mechanical drop sets, doing you know maybe doubling up certain body parts throughout the course of the week, looking at the diet, doing those slow incremental things. Okay, sweet, I've put on a couple of kilos, weight loss is plateaued, maybe I need to bump it up a little bit more. Or weight gain is plateaued, so I need to bump it up a little bit more. Maybe weight loss is stalled, so we need to, dip in a little bit, you know, go from something like ground beef to, like a lean steak, or, drop an egg out of somewhere. Like just those small, like little tweaks. It doesn't look like much, but it will do what it needs to do.
And even for bulking, especially, I'll just harp on that for a second. And then this is something I've done dead wrong repeatedly. Bulking, I didn't ever say or think I was dirty bulking, but I obviously was with the amount of weight I gained in such a short amount of time. But unless it's your first year of lifting, and even if this is your first year, it would be a very good reap of benefits. It's if you gain a pound of muscle a month, that's a lot of muscle. And that what that means is that you should probably be trying to aim for about a pound a month, which means a quarter pound a week, which basically means that you probably won't see your scale move almost at all. Month over
Mm,
month, you will see slight deviations, but what isn't if let's say a pound is 3,500 calories, which I don't think is inherently accurate, but that's what they typically estimate it as. That's about 100 and what, like 15 calories a day, which is like maybe a half of a cookie or an apple.
yeah, it's not much.
And is the same thing goes with weight loss.
Yeah, exactly. See, personally, I don't really like scale weight as a metric for this sort of stuff. I think there's better ways that you can track it. Um, because scale weight, like I feel like it messes with people's heads too. Like unless you are religious with like everything that you put in your mouth, and it's the same food, the same amounts, the same time of day, you know, you wearing the same clothes every time you step on that scale, and you got to do it religiously at the same time, it's kind of like, there could be a fluctuation. You get on after you've had a glass of water, there could be a fluctuation. You get on with like an extra shirt, fluctuate. Like there's all these different things that can change, and it's like that freaks people out. Oh, the scales went up today, but I'm trying to lose weight, and then they might drop heaps because maybe you missed a meal or whatever. It's like it's handy to know, I guess, at some point, like what's your starting weight. A couple of weeks in, maybe what's your weight there. But I think things like waist measurement or skin folds and pitches, they're probably the three that I would go for or recommend to someone to keep track of, because you can check a skin fold, in several different places, and you can go, okay, like maybe it didn't come off this area, but it's come off this area. So okay, something's working here. Maybe a measurement. Okay, I've taken a measurements dropped a little bit. Sweet, that's working. Picture, you know, those like slight visual changes that you probably might not see day to day if you look in a mirror, but if you compare a picture from last week to this week to next week, that's where you'll see it.
Yeah, I've never really gotten into skin folds. I actually have a pair of calipers, but I think body fat, unless you're stepping on, honestly, I think body fat's kind of a useless metric, but I do agree with what you're saying in terms of how much, you can tell. It's a very interesting point that you're saying. You can see, you might be losing fat in certain areas, which I've never thought about it in that light. So that's pretty interesting. I don't know if it's useful to calculate, use those measurements to calculate your body fat as a percentage, but I think that's another tangential point. Everything else I completely agree with. I do think the scale, and you're completely right in terms of it messing with people's head, but I do think it's a useful means of looking at change, measuring change. And what I try to tell people when they're looking at the scale is that you can be a 200-pound person that looks like Peter Griffin. I don't know if you watch Family Guy. Um, or you can be a 200-pound Arnold Schwarzenegger. So the scale doesn't inherently tell you about what's underneath it. And that's why I love waist circumference. Waist circumference, I'm huge on. Would completely agree with that. And I think you're using the calipers in a similar way. So that's a good idea as well. I just find calipers, you're there, you gotta get someone to do it and not as accessible, which is, if you have someone to do it, I think that's great. But you can buy a string and measure your waist with it, or I actually, that's actually a great idea. That makes it even more accessible. I forgot you could do that, but and that really tells you about what the meat's made out of. If Aaron loses 10 pounds but puts 5 inches on his waist, I'm a horrible coach. If Aaron gains 10 pounds and loses 5 inches off his waist, he's probably stepping on the stage to be an Olympia, and he's probably doing something behind the scenes that I don't approve of, injecting into his buttocks, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so they are tools that we can use to analyze how the process is going, whichever ones you prefer. But I completely agree. The scale can be useful. And I think the way you're using calipers is super interesting as well.
Yeah. The calipers have been interesting. So I don't really take the so I don't use them to measure body fat as a percentage. Um, Similar sort of thing, like it's one of those metrics where it's like people will sort of glorify it, like, oh, I'm 8%, I'm 7%. It's like, look, you know, some people look really good at 12%. Some people look like crap at 6%. So, it's just another number that can mess with you potentially. But it's just what I've found personally from using them on myself, and what I've liked about it is that it will sort of track those little minor changes where it's like, okay, yeah, you might have dropped like 1 or 2 mil off one particular area, on the chest. Nothing's changed on the stomach. Okay, sweet. Well, it's just another metric that we can look at and go, hey, look, you might not have seen any visual changes in the last week from photo to photo, but here's something that I can measure for you that says you're on track. So don't stress. Let's keep going. Next week's going to be, you know, there'll be more changes. Just follow the plan.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I didn't mention pictures. I think pictures are awesome too. One thing I will say though, having the pictures with the weight at that day, I think can be awesome
Hmm.
because you get to see the difference in weight next to the pictures. So that can be really cool and I think very powerful because pictures say 1,000 words. Your weight doesn't really matter, as we said. And I'll even further agree with you. I remember I got really into Kino body when I was young. I was around 15 or 16. I started cutting, and I can promise you that no one cares if you're at 8, 9, 10, 11% body fat. If you're 6 foot and 165 pounds, which is like 80, probably 79 kilos, something like that, soaking wet.
Hmm.
You're skin and bones. You might have a six pack, but it doesn't really look good. You just look emaciated. So that completely
Hmm.
caters to your point as well.
I really like that idea that you've put up with like having the weight with the photos, because that can be also too, having having that data as well. You can look at a proper like 3 month transformation where there's no Photoshop, there's no drugs, it's legitimate, and you can go, hey, look, yeah, I didn't go from like, overweight to like shredded six pack in 3 months. This is a realistic like 5 or 6 kilo, or 10 or 15 pound change. This is what it looks like, and this is now like to get to that next point. This is now what it's going to take to get there, and so you've then got over the course of whatever journey you're on, you're going to go, oh yeah, this is the difference in 20 pounds, 30 pounds, you know, increase or weight loss, whatever it might be.
Yeah. It's awesome to be able to see that, newspaper article of yourself sort of thing where you can just check
Mm,
back and say, "Oh, this was Tyler in May 2021." Actually, one of my favorite things I've ever done is I got 2 body fat scans done. I don't know how accurate they were, but they spin you around on this little thing, and it was free at my gym. That's the only reason I did it. And they take measurements of everything. And again, I don't know how accurate everything is, but it's like your waist, your abs, and all this stuff. And that is one of my biggest regrets as a coach, as someone that's tried to change their body. Take as much measurements. As I said before, what gets managed gets measured. And I'm sure you do, and everyone has debates about whether their training is working, whether they've actually are seeing improvements in their physique, because they are so incremental, they are so small, they take so long to see any even marginal differences in your physique in terms of gaining muscle. You can lose fat pretty rapidly if you choose to. As we talked about, it's not very sustainable in that way. It's another point. But if you can see cold hard facts where it's like, all right, my arm was at one point 12 inches and now I'm at 15-inch arms or 13-inch arms, and I'm at the same weight. That means that I have gained muscle, lost fat, and I have massive biceps. Probably not at 13 inches, but
yeah, yeah, for sure. That's a definitely a good thing to a good data to have.
so we've talked a little bit or a decent amount diving into, let's say, the macro view of weight loss.
Hmm.
We come from a little house on Ray Pete on Oregon, United States. Forget what town he was from, whatever. What are you trying to push your clients towards in terms of, nutrients and macros? Like, do you have a set list of foods or things that you are really trying to instill habits into your clients, or it's kind of just meet them where they're at, whatever they enjoy, try and find those foods and harp on the good ones and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so I try to sort of have a blanket rule of like quality. Um, try to up the quality of the food, which unfortunately at this time is difficult. It's difficult, especially where I'm based. It's difficult to find, and it's expensive. So, if you're telling someone, yeah, you've got to go and eat organically, like to give you a rough idea of what it would take to feed, you know, like I'll just give you like a general idea of like myself, my wife, and my son. If we were to eat sort of like an 80-20 thing of like organic food, grass fed beef and stuff, we would be looking at about $500 to $600 a week on food.
So that's Australian, right?
That's Australian, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I just did the math. That's around $325. Yeah, that checks out because I eat a ridiculous amount, and
Hmm.
I'm probably spending more than that myself a month for just me.
Okay.
Um, but I also eat a ridiculous amount, but That's I mean, I can't imagine. I think I would end up spending right now, and I'm trying to get fresh fruit and trying to make myself feel the best. So I mean, that's
Mm,
around 1,200. I think I'm probably spending around $400 a month in American, and so you're probably spending around 2K Australian, around 1,200 dollars,
mhm.
maybe a little less, maybe around 1050, give or take, in terms of what
Okay.
you're spending at the grocery store. I can't imagine that's a lot of. I mean, if I were to spend that's $1,200, $1,600 for a family of four each month. You multiply that by 10, 16,000. Now we're at multiply that by add another two. What is that? 1850 or 18.5 or
Mm.
that's that's a chunk of change, dude.
Yeah, and then you add that, it's like you're looking at, your groceries and your rent are costing the same amount of money, and so you're already up like big dollars. So I do try to factor that in. So I've got like a set list of things that I would say, listen, like these are kind of the non-negotiables when it comes to anything that's got fat in it. So dairy products, your cheese, your egg, like cheese, milk, yogurt, um, eggs, meat. They're the things that I want to see, like, you know, with your meats, like minimum grass fed. If you can get organic, you know, try your best to. Um, Eggs, get them organic because under that, they're pretty garbage. Same with the dairy, go organic, grass fed where you can find it. Um, and probably potatoes. They're the other thing that I would say. Like, yes, everything else you can kind of get away with. Like the quality, at least in Australia, is pretty reasonable for things like fruit, and different like that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, I just sort of say like go fresh. Here's the kind of pool of fruits that you can eat, pool of meats that I'd like you to have. Stay away from too much chicken, stay away from the pork, that sort of stuff. Um, Saturated fats, go your coconut oil, your ghee, your butter, those sorts of things. So I try to go more of that metabolic approach, get rid of the polyunsaturated fats, um, get rid of try to like eliminate as much of those additives as possible as well. um, the different gums and stuff like that. But it's pretty tricky. Like you start to limit a lot of things when you go down that route. So I like to keep it pretty individual as well because you know, um, like for example, like xanthian gum, it has potential to cause inflammation, but it might not cause inflammation for you. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I might give you something, or I might recommend a product and that's in there. Now, if you tell me like after a week or two, oh hey, look, I'm starting to feel, this particular way, and I look at the diet and I go, okay, sweet. Well, that's the only thing that we've put in that's got potential to be like pro-inflammatory. Maybe let's take that out and change that for something else. But overall, it's like there's only a couple of like must dos, like I said, fats, dairy products, meats, that sort of thing that I would recommend these particular ways. Everything else is kind of a free for all. I'm not like I know Ray Pete's pretty like basic when it comes to like it's like fruit juice and it's sugar and it's beef liver and it's oysters and it's like kind of um, smaller, like a smaller pool of what you can sort of do. Um, but yeah, I try to just take those principles from him and just kind of go, look, if you having like a salad is going to make your whole week, it's like just eat it. Because the stress that you're going to go under from not eating that because it's your favorite thing in the world is going to be worse than the potential side effect of a couple of green leaves.
I'll push back a little bit there, just in that I think Ray would tell you if you feel good eating salad, eat salad. I think his diet is well, he would say he doesn't have a diet. He would also say he's not a scientist, he's an artist. I learned recently. But he, he would say, do what makes you feel good. And I think a lot of people have misconstrued that what he recommended was a fundamental diet with sugar being the mainstream and, organ meats and beef and all that stuff. And then a lot of people have taken variations on it, like, the thermo diet, things like that, which we are both very familiar with. And then the other thing I did want to say with things like xanthan gum, I think there's a fine line in terms of what you can get away with, but I don't think xanthan gum, outside of its role in potentially being beneficial to chew because it might be antibacterial. And we can use another example if we don't want to use xanthan gum, like gluten. I don't think gluten has any benefits whatsoever. If you could completely eliminate gluten from your diet, I think it would probably be a pro. Now, if you can eat sourdough, I do it every day. I love it. Or if you can eat regular bread and have no issues with it, you can get away with it. That doesn't mean that the gluten is good. It just means that, you can squeak by. Sometimes you don't get hit by a car, you just almost get hit by a car. Uh, Not that that's the best example, but sometimes we can get lucky with some people, and some people can have one piece of regular bread and start floating up towards the sky like a balloon because they're so bloated. Other people can never eat bread at all. So there is that individuality, bio-individuality, whatever you want to call it. But I agree with you, and not everyone needs to be perfect either. So I try to recommend the cleanest foods possible. But if you can have some ice cream with a xanthan gum or whatever and get away with it, then it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the thing. It's like it's sort of taking those principles and yeah. I shouldn't have said the repeat diet because, like you said, it isn't a diet. I think from my experience with that on its own, I think that it's like his sort of basic recommendations. If you look at them from the point of view of like, okay, these are like the most basic, bioidentical sort of forms of what we need as a human to live, without any extra stress on the gut and the liver and all those sorts of things. It's like you could probably run that as a little thing for like a couple of months, get yourself like really really good or heal whatever it is that you're dealing with, and then like branch off from there. Correct those deficiencies. Um, yeah, so that's kind of what I was sort of getting at with that. But I think that yeah, if you feel good on it, like that's one that's going to be sustainable. If you absolutely love bread and you don't have any digestive issues with it whatsoever, then yeah, I'm probably going to recommend to you like, hey, that like crap that you get off the shelf at your local supermarket that's got soy flour and canola oil and a whole bunch of numbers in it. Like maybe let's get rid of that and let's go to some quality sourdough that's got like four ingredients. Make that change, because if you do that, it's going to be better for your health like long term. And you know what? If you're going to eat bread every day, sweet. Like lucky you, enjoy it because it's going to be it's what works for you, and we'll just run with that. If you can't, it's like cool. Sourdough might be like ideal, but you just might not function on it properly. Like I know for myself, it's one of those things. I've tried a few different brands. I've tried making it myself. I've tried mixing it with other flours, and it's like I can get like one piece, I feel fine. If I go two pieces, so if I have like a burger or something, it's a no go for me. I just don't feel very good. So it's just one of those things. It's like, yeah, I'll just take that out. I don't need to eat it. Um, it doesn't enrich my life or do anything negative for me. So I'm happy to take it out. But
Mhm. Yeah, completely agree.
like we've spoken about, I think that the big thing with this is just having those principles there. That it's like, look, as an individual, or you should have a rough idea as an individual of what makes you feel good and what makes you feel like crap when you eat it. You may need to pay a little more attention to those things, like eat something, see how you feel, be present with yourself, and kind of like be conscious. See what that does for your digestion and how often you go to the toilet, and or, how you sleep after these things, whatever it might be. Once you sort of nut out like what it is that you like, how you feel on these certain things, if you feel a bit crappy on this, you can look for some substitutes. We can start to tweak that. But like, I feel like each diet's going to be probably more individual and needs to be more individual than say like a training plan. but I would be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Can you rephrase that one more time?
Yeah, so sort of like what I'm saying is like if if we go if you and me both went to the gym and it's like I can put you on a cable and say like we're gonna do a cable curl like this, it's gonna train the bicep, once we set it up to your height and whatever, like those small variables, but ultimately the curl is going to work for you, the curl is gonna work for me, and it's gonna work for pretty much everyone, you
Mm.
know, for that same sort of idea. But when it comes to the diet, it's like I kind of feel like there's a bit more individuality there. It's like, there might be, yeah, okay, we all need magnesium, we all need sodium, we all need, potassium. Those are like basic fundamentals. But as far as like what foods you're going to get, it's like that might not work for you the same it works for me.
Yeah, I think I would agree. So, what I would tell you, and you're in Ben Giannis's tell Ben I said hello when you talk to him next. He talks a lot about the individual variation in structure. I guess you could call that morphology. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but your femur might be like this, and my femur might be a little bit like this, and even actually, this is what a shoulder impingement or an impingement looks like when there is a space there. So we might both do Y raises, and let's say we have it perfectly executed with all of our anchors set up and yada yada yada. And they might both train our middle delts to the same degree. We have the same weight, same tension, yada yada yada. But we might look a little bit different in the actual execution because my humerus is shaped a little bit longer. My arms are a little bit wider. Let's say the way my humerus fits into my acromial socket, acromium, all that stuff. And I think that's the same thing in terms of nutrition. So, the principle is the same. The Y rays, have done somewhat correctly, is still going to train the middle delts. I still think we need to hit all of our bases in terms of nutritional requirements. So we have that is just a fact. We have certain nutrients we need a certain demand of, and those nutrient demands can change based on your environment, how stressed you are. And also, there's a huge amount of history in terms of one of the reasons I can probably eat bread and I digest pasta pretty well too is because I grew up in New Jersey. Everyone is eating a ton of Italian food. My family had pizza once a week at the minimum, and I would eat like 4 slices of pizza, and I'm sure my digestion wasn't as good as it could have been having a ton of pizza. I also don't think pizza is as bad as people make it out to be, but I grew up on it. I don't know if it's very different for you in Australia where you didn't have that. So, our outlook is probably the same, and I do believe, and I'm open to being wrong on this, that the optimal diet's gonna look relatively similar within some kind of a range in terms of macros and micros. Again, micros will vary a lot more depending on your environment and your stress levels, and if you're training, what you're doing to create those nutrient and energy demands. But I do think generally a high carb, moderate fat, somewhat moderate protein. It could be high carb, even high fat. Jay Feldman has recommended up to 40% fat before, mostly coming from saturated and maybe monounsaturated fats as well, is going to be generally the optimal thing. Now, I have a friend, Pedro, who is much smarter than I am, and he has made a great point that certain people, for whatever reason, absolutely kill it on vegan. Certain people, long term, kill it on carnivore. Now, I don't think they're the most sustainable diets either way, but if you feel better than you ever have before on an extreme diet, maybe your physiology is that different that that is what you need. I don't generally think that is the case. And I mean, what is it? The exception doesn't break the rule. The majority of people are not going to find solace in those extreme diets. So that is the whole point. Most people are not Michael Phelps either. So I do think if you're going to take, what is it, top down, the bald eagle eye view, if you can look from that far out, you're going to see very similar outcomes in terms of person needs the same thing, but it can look very different. And you might thrive off way more starches, or maybe I thrive off way more starches and sourdough and white rice, and you really need to focus on sugar. But because and the last thing I'll say about that, there's so many things that go into digestion that you're kind of born with your morphology, your bone structure. and maybe it changes a little bit as you weight lift and do certain activities and your body changes around that. But it's relative to how much you can change your gut microbiome, your digestion. Your digestion can change on a day-to-day basis. If your bone structure changes, it's probably because you got hit by a car or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, no, I did.
so I think that's a great way to wrap this up. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, just yeah, I want to say thank you for having me on. It's been good to be able to chat and go back and forth on some things, and yeah, it's been awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was a great time. I'm very happy with how it turned out as well. I think everyone will enjoy this. And Aron, thanks for coming on and taking the time as well. Where can everyone find you?
So I'm only on Instagram at the moment. It's Aron Keys _PT. It's Aron with one A as well. So ARONKEYS _PT. It's non-private, so yeah, you can DM me, you can add me, look at all my stuff. You don't have to add me, but that's what I'm at. So if you want to chat, by all means, please reach out.
Awesome. Yeah, and definitely reach out to me as well, as you know. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Until next time, guys, be good.